This is an unusual morning in that in the rules of our committee we can take up a resolution at the full committee, and so we're going to be doing that today. And I'm going to turn this meeting over to Representative Harden to chair it, and I will go present the bill. And you're in good hands because Brian is right here. So.
Wherever you'd like to sit, Madam Chair. All right, Chairman Smith, you do have a resolution before us today, and I believe LC 40-1070S, is that correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct. And I believe there are enough copies for the full committee right now. It is not the resolution in your folder. It is the one that has just been passed out. So if y'all will just check on the second page, it should say that the report should go to the Board of Natural Resources no later than June 30th, 2017. That's the document I'm working from. That's
Okay,
the only change from what you've read to this. Before I begin, Mr. Chair, may I take a moment to recognize the effort our committee members have made to study and to look into this serious issue. We have been to the coast. Most of us were there, and it's important enough to your legislators who are here today to be appraised of these difficult issues that face our state. And we could not have asked for a better educational environment. We were at Skidaway Institute. We also toured and looked at the well project on Tybee Island, and we talked to so many of the people impacted by this issue, both business, industry, providers, concerned citizens, activist groups. So we wanted to know and get a feel for this issue. When I got back, I began to look at Senate Bill 36, and Senator Ligon and I have talked about this, and he might be able to make it today. He's going to see if he can to make a comment. But so to those of you who are new to this process, one of the things to let you know is when you get to a difficult bill and you start working it through your process, if every step of the way it is very difficult to come to any kind of consensus. It makes it harder to get out of a committee. It makes it even harder to get off the House floor. And my further research in talking to the governor's office was that they are not supportive of any limiting language on ASRs. They feel it's important as an option for the state. So I went back. I thought about the comments I heard from y'all and about how I felt too. And I believe as members of the General Assembly representing our state as a whole, we know fully well that there are concerns, serious concerns about the protection of this quality of water. And to carry that further, I think we would all sit here and say we have serious concerns about all our waters anywhere in the state of Georgia. But this is of particular interest to so many people, and there's a level of concern that needs to be addressed. And so I've had several productive conversations with EPD personnel, and as this resolution began to take shape, I also began the job of trying to convince the governor's office that this will be an expression of the will of our body. It is not a piece of legislation that goes to the governor's office. It is just a statement from our body. And so to that point then, I will be talking to LC 40-10070S. And before I begin that, I also want to thank very much the Carl Vinson Institute of Government. we have formed for the full body of our committee a partnership, so that we can deliver information to our committee members as a whole when we seek and trying to resolve our issues. Essentially, the first few parts of the resolution down to line 18 talks about the importance of protecting underground drinking water, make sure that that area has sufficient water, make sure that that area has safe water, to prevent any, I call it pirating, profiteering, and pollution, make sure none of that happens in that area, and to state so that the citizens of the rest of our state understand that there is a significant state interest in the maintenance of clean and reliable water for all areas of the state. And so right now, though, we're addressing what is a very serious concern for the residents of the whole coastal area and even inland in a way. So I felt like that we could have a productive and statewide conversation about this issue if we more or less worked and encouraged and worked with the Environmental Protection Division to review, put out for review what are the existing rules and regs, and then to start this process of public comment with the citizens of our state. The rules and regs process is very open, and it will give our citizens an area and a chance to express their concerns, and hopefully we will come to some agreement on some areas that we think might need to be tightened or changed, or we're just more aware of this issue. And in light of that, in light of the election coming up as well, I was afraid that this issue might get lost in the activity the next few months concerning just with national politics. So I have added, and this is the addition to this 1070S, lines 26 through 28, which just says that the findings of the Environmental Protection Division will be reported to the Board of Natural Resources no later than June 20th, 2017. That completes my presentation.
Thank you very much. Do any committee members have any questions at this point? And we will limit them, if you will, to one question, since we have committee members that have other obligations. 16, is that
Me.
Representative Buckner?
Madam Chair, I received an email last night with someone asking the question on line 8, what do we mean by state interest? And I think I know, but I promised I would ask. So.
The state has an interest in all the waters of the state of Georgia. The language that was in Senator Ligon's bill was specific to property owners over the aquifer. That created a whole other area of very confusing and difficult debate. The state of Georgia is a regulated riparian state, and so that means that we have right to reasonable use of the water, but it is not our water. It's not the water of that property owner up above the state. And in that area, 100,000 gallons a day is what is defined by EPD as regulated riparian. And if someone hits me with a spitball, I know that EPD might be disagreeing with my statement, but I don't know. So that needed to be there instead of the language that the people whose property is over the aquifer have rights to that property. That brings us, we are a regulated riparian state, and that's called Eastern Water Law. And to change that, the language in the Senate Bill 36 would have, we would be here camping out every night for the next 10 years, because that is something we wouldn't resolve with that. Thank you.
Thank you.
22. Chuck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chair Lady Smith, thank you very much for bringing this, and I want to thank you as a member of this committee for all the effort you and your staff have put together to try to train and educate us through the Environmental Academy and working with Carl Vinson Institute and private foundation support for that. Being a slow learner, in spite of that, I have struggled with the ASR issue personally, trying to wrap my arms around it. is it a panacea and a good tool? Is it the boogeyman, or does it fall somewhere in between? So I'm really excited to support this, and again, I want to thank you. I do have I guess a technical question on the addition there on line 26 that was added in the committee sub. Is the fact that we're urging rather than, quote, requiring EPD, is that because this is in the form of a resolution and not a bill? Is that what dictates that we urge rather than require, or is that the author's preference that it be urging only?
The author feels that this is the very important first step, and that the language we use is important to try and build a consensus in our state to work together to solve the problem rather than dividing up into teams. And so it was my choice on those words. A legislator can put any language they want in a bill. My goal is to try and help move this debate forward and move it in a way that the citizens of our state and the members of our legislature are comfortable commenting, and that we work in tandem with existing law that the EPD is going to know about. So thank you for that question.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, I have a answer also to the waters of the state. So years ago, we worked very hard on something called the statewide water plan, and in the planning book that was put before the General Assembly, there is an OCGA 12-5-522 parentheses A section that I think might help the person who asked you that question understand it. And this is what the code says. Georgia manages water resources in a sustainable manner to support the state's economy, to protect public health and natural systems, and to enhance the quality of life of all citizens. So to have carved out another area just for that one particular area would have gone contrary to that code section too. It's just further information.
Chairman McCall.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through my friend who we have been through water wars and everything else dealing with this particular subject over the last ever how long we've been here. There's two places in here that it talks about DNR reviewing its current regulations. If at some point while they doing that, and if at some time between now or in, June the 30th, some new science all of a sudden comes to light, can that not be included in the recommendations to the board?
It's my understanding that that is hopefully part of the process, that if another state is doing something, and in the beginning, as I've talked with the EPD personnel, and Mary Walker's been invaluable to help me with this issue. First of all, there are a lot of areas, rules and regs that don't specifically say ASR, but apply to that process of ASR. But going forward, at any time we have better technology, better science, it should be part of the debate and discussion. The rules and regs as they are going to be put out there, and then we will go from there saying, well, what does this mean? What does that mean? And I've actually asked EPD here to make a statement if the chair and the committee wishes to hear how that process will work. This is a first step, and it's a different first step a lot of times than what we take, because when we were down at the coast, we learned we have the saltwater plume and the measures taken in the industrial business area. That threat has lessened a little bit, so we have some time to really be students of the subject matter and for our citizens to be engaged. But if the chair wishes, EPD would be the group to comment on that too.
All right, we do have one other question, and then Representative Tanner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Coming from the North Georgia mountain area, most of our citizens use well water, bored drill wells, and I'd received a couple of calls, and I told them that was not what we were going after here, but I just want to clarify just for the record. Their concern is that eventually EPD will require private citizens who are going to drill wells on their property for their primary water source to permit that well and to meter that well, which is not required now. that's not the intention of where we're heading with this, is it?
No, not at all, not at
Good.
all.
All right, thank you.
But at some point, I can assure you, we'll be looking into that too. Hope it's when 2020, maybe,
Right.
just go into that serious issue.
Thank you.
All our issues are before. I want to say one more thing to our committee to understand, and Chairman McCall made me think of that. Most of you did not go through the 10-year-long process of studying everything about our state, its water quality, and its water supply. But when we finished that as a body in 2008, we adopted a resolution that included regional water plans for our state as a whole. And so, to me, an answer back to the Water Council in your area would be that this is a ground-up type process for us, and your Water Council in that area hopefully will review, comment on, make suggestions, work in tandem with EPD, and in a way determine your quality of life with your water, your quality and your quantity of water, your economic development, your population forecast. All those things go together for our healthy state. And so when something like this comes up, we know what we're doing. We're dealing with the aquifers, the underground. But it doesn't lessen the problem that you have in your area, nor does it lessen the problem any of us have in our areas. But what we need to remember as legislators, and maybe that's something we can look into a little bit further, is that we have our business and community leaders, our environmental groups, our interested citizens. They are all part of these teams throughout the state that are directly studying and looking at these issues. And so if that one has perked up to the top of enough to want further information, then that regional board can bring that up and work on that. You do it through memorandums of understanding with EPD, and they're always looking at and reviewing, and all of those members have been appointed now for the second time around.
And just so I'll make it clear, for anyone out there in my community, our citizens are concerned about the overregulation of those private wells, and anyone who's on those local water councils who promoted EPD regulating or metering those private wells, if they were in elected office, probably would not be in elected office anymore after the next election. So we're very much a farming and residential community that people live on large tracts of land in most of my district, and people are concerned about the overregulation of those private small wells that people just have to furnish their homes. So just want to make that clear.
And I hope that area will take that opportunity, because the regional councils in those areas should reflect the citizens' concerns as well as everybody else. It's what we're doing here, y'all. It's come to this level at the state level that we need to work more and look further into the aquifer storage recovery. I can tell you my neck of the woods, we're always looking at the Chattahoochee River and is it polluted today? I mean, we all have our own issues. It behooves us as legislators to be familiar with who the members are. They're not just city people or elected people, they're citizens, and so that's your voice. And you also have to look at economics and population. Your local governments handle zoning, and that is an important part of planning for the future for their citizens. Thank you.
As the chairman has said, Mayor Walker with DNR with EPD is here with us, and could you, in about a 3-minute presentation, catch us up on that?
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Thanks for having us here. As the chairwoman has said, we have been discussing ASR for years now. And as you know, EPD does oppose the concept of a moratorium. We think it would be unnecessary and unwise just to take that option off the table. And we believe that we can regulate it in a manner that would be protective of public health and the environment. We do have a number of regulations that are already in place, and I actually have for y'all, and I'll leave it with you today, a summary of what those are that we already have on the books that would apply to any ASR project. That said, given all this conversation, we do understand that there is a lack of familiarity with these regs and that there's a concern about how they would apply to an individual ASR project, because everyone is concerned about, I mean, obviously our aquifers are incredibly valuable for the state, and we get that those concerns need to be addressed. So this concept of really going forth with a public and open assessment of the regs we have in place and making sure that we have everything we need, and if we don't have it, then putting something in place to address ASR concerns. We think this is a really good and sound, reasonable path to help us address the questions.
Thank you very much. We have one signed up for public comment, Gil Rogers with the Southern Environmental Law Center. Gil, if you would, and 3 minutes too, if possible.
Of course. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Madam Chairman. Good morning, everybody. My name is Gil Rogers. I'm with the Southern Environmental Law Center. Appreciate the opportunity to comment today. And I really appreciate this committee's attention to groundwater protection. That's a crucial issue for Georgia, particularly the Florida aquifer, but all groundwater around the state is a huge resource for us. I completely agree with Chairwoman Smith that it is a public resource. It's not owned by any single property owner or entity, and that's really important for the purposes of being able to protect it. My only comment in rising today is this resolution is a good step, but we really want to see more protection for groundwater through regulation. We already know that EPD has some regulatory power over being able to protect groundwater, whether it's an ASR project or really any project. We're not just talking about ASR, but there are gaps in EPD's ability to look after this important resource. And once this resource is contaminated, that's it. We have the Federal Clean Water Act, we have the Federal Safe Drinking Water Act, we have some state law. All of those have kind of patchy applicability over some ASR projects or some groundwater intrusion projects, if you will. But we do know, like I said, that there are gaps in those regulations. So my only comment is, rather than urging EPD to look at its regs and report out, the reason we are supportive of Senate Bill 36 is that it actually requires EPD to go ahead and address the gaps that we know already exist in groundwater protection regulations in Georgia. And it's a very important issue, whether you're a farmer or a property owner looking for a drinking water supply. And so we would just say that given this 1.5-year time frame, let's go ahead and have EPD move to that rulemaking process, keep it open. We know there's still a lot of education that should be done. We're supportive of that, but we do know that there are gaps, and so let's save EPD that step and go on and urge them to move forward with regulating. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers. Actually, the EPD rulemaking process, excuse me, involves much public input, and I think that's another reason that this is a good approach to what we're doing. All right, I'm going to allow one more question, Representative Buckner. No, I'm sorry. Excuse me.
Motion to appropriate.
This is an appropriate time then.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I would move due pass on the substitute we have in front of us to H.R. 1198, that being LC 401070S.
All right, I have a motion. Is there a second? I have a motion and a second. Any discussion by the committee? Those in favor, aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. You can close this out.
Okay. And we are adjourned.